Welcome to Kids on Trucks. I'm Chris. This is Waylon. We're working on a 1978 Toyota Land Cruiser, and today we're gonna install a fuel pump. How does that sound? In order to change a fuel pump, you're gonna need a few things. One, we've got the old fuel pump here. Two, we've got a new fuel pump here. Three, we've got a fuel pump gasket and a couple of rulers so we can make sure we've got the right fuel pump. Here we are in the engine compartment. The fuel pump's job is to draw fuel from the tank and pump it up to the carburetor. And the way it does that is the camshaft in the engine presses up against this arm, and as that camshaft rotates, it pumps the fuel pump, and it creates a vacuum and pressure and sends fuel up to the carburetor. It's a little difficult to see, but the fuel pump gets mounted right down there on the side of the engine block below the oil filter, the alternator, and the distributor. Before installing the fuel pump, you want to check a couple things and make sure that you've got the right fuel pump. Especially with these older vehicles, it's easy to get the wrong parts for them sometimes. This is why I had the straight edges. You can take one straight edge and put it on the mounting surface of the fuel pump, and then you can take your other straight edge, put it up against that, and measure how far this arm comes off of that mounting surface, because this is what's going to be riding up against the camshaft inside the engine. So you can measure this and see that it comes about 1 3/8 off of that mounting surface. So now we'll check the new one and make sure it's the same. So we're just going to do the same thing. Put the straight edge against the mounting surface and then measure off of that straight edge to the end of the arm. And we've got the same measurement, about 1 3/8. 1 13/32. Let's check the other one again. 1 12/32. The other thing you want to check is to make sure that the mounting holes on the two fuel pumps are going to line up. A real easy way to do that is I just took the old gasket off of the old fuel pump, and I can slip it onto the new fuel pump and see that those mounting holes are going to line up. Here we are underneath the vehicle, and what we're going to attempt to do now is measure the distance from the camshaft to the exterior mounting surface on the block. That way we can confirm that the old fuel pump that was on there and the new fuel pump, which both match, are in fact the correct fuel pump for this engine. So it's a little difficult to get a good measurement on here, but you should be able to stick the ruler through the mounting surface up against the camshaft and then take a measurement. So we've got about 1 1/8. The camshaft needs to push that arm back, so the camshaft is probably at the height of its stroke there. So that's probably good. I think we're just going to try this and see what happens. So now we're ready to install our new fuel pump, and some people don't like to use silicone on their gaskets. I prefer to use a little bit of silicone just to help hold that gasket in place during installation. Just put a real thin layer on the mounting surface of the fuel pump. And then you can put your gasket on there. Now our gasket isn't going to move around while we're in there trying to get this fuel pump in place. And so now we just have to maneuver the fuel pump into place and put the mounting hardware in and then hook up the fuel lines. Sometimes it's easier to put the mounting hardware in from underneath the vehicle. So now we've got our fuel pump mounted, and I'm going to tighten the hardware down with a 12mm wrench, and then we're going to connect the fuel lines and try to fire this thing back up. So now we've got our new fuel pump mounted, and we just need to connect the fuel lines, which right now I have going to a makeshift electric fuel pump. So we've got the new fuel pump installed and the fuel lines connected, so we're ready to give this a shot and see what happens. Are you ready? Okay. Sometimes it takes a while to get the fuel pumped up to the carburetor to get it started. So we're just going to keep trying it. Well, we've been trying to get this thing started for a while and it's not working. We've cracked the lines loose on the fuel pump output to see if there's any fuel coming out of there, and there's not. So what that's telling me is that we have the wrong fuel pump for this engine. So we're gonna look up a couple of facts and try and figure out what's going on here. On the 2F Toyota engine, the serial number is stamped on a small plate right above the starter, and it's a little difficult to see, but there it is. So it's a 2F885195. So according to the engine serial number chart on Spectre Off-Road's website, the chart has a lot of missing information and it only goes through 1978. So even though our Land Cruiser is a 1978 model, the engine came from a junkyard and we're not sure what year vehicle the engine came out of. What we do know is that it has the power steering pump mount bracket on it, and Toyota did not start doing that until 1979. So we know that our engine is later than 1979, and the fuel pump we bought was for a 1978. So at this point, we're going to have to try and send the new fuel pump back and buy another one for a later engine. So we will pick this up in another episode and see if we can't get this fuel pump situation figured out. That's all for now. Say bye, Waylon. High five? Okay. So I got to thinking about it, and there's a small spacer that's on that fuel pump, and that spacer was forcing that arm too far back, so the camshaft wasn't even rubbing up against it. So I took the spacer out, and now we're going to try it again. You ready? And now it's running. High five.